Rwy'r holtas ha suas rikiad Conlan Pipe an yn jerinje tua y fain. Sa ferchusjen Field Marshal Montgomery farpischen Höhl y geleg ymwch turus. Sé Conlan on Foploch St. Lawrence O'Toole va os kion chaig an y da wiele se dich. Smasjön gaan jel terug se bi munjast Holland Pipe an yn jerin. Ha koltas gemadal gezocht de fiberen erenach ha goal paast an y farpischen in y fibede. Gejaraf, Session y chwsbar a hafanier gan yw, agus cwtioch fersyn imerach grein fib gwchasal na herin, y fib ulin. Bialfiaste, priaf valle erin y tua, skide farvel ui voor ans fib voor alabanach, agus han kiel sio leis y fib vodd y doladash, imich bliana.
It's very, very old. We have done some research on it and we think that we can trace it as far back almost as some of the heritage that we have in Scotland. Some would say the bagpipes nearly originated here and then went to Scotland. And I know that one or two of the old traditionalists here would try to claim that. I wouldn't get involved in that argument at all. I have a foot in both camps, so it's not an argument for me to defend. But it is a very, very old tradition here, and of course we have a mixture of pipes here. We also have our Irish pipes, and the playing of pipes in Ireland has always been, in Ireland as a whole, has always been a very strong tradition.
Steam packet.
Generally speaking, most people from Northern Ireland have good bagpipes. The instruments are good because the training from the bands. They tend not to struggle with instruments. But the other hand is sometimes the technique might be a bit bandish. And for me it's important to go out and listen and watch the top guys, Willie, Roddy, Angus McCall, and listen to what they're doing, because those are what the top, those are the top players. Very, very important for young kids to get out and watch and listen to them, especially live, because you actually see what they're doing. I have been going to Pipe Major in McClellan, ex of the Strathclyde Police Pipe Band, since 2003, I think, for lessons, and I've been going to Robert Wallace for Pibroch lessons since 2002. You're going over for lessons. You may as well go over to guys who know what they're talking about, and I feel that that's really important for continued development in the art. It's not something that you can. Sometimes these wee touches when you're playing are so subtle that it doesn't matter how many different recordings you listen to, you can only get them by going to somebody and having it demonstrated right then and there for you. I had the very good fortune to judge the juveniles at the All-Ireland Solo Championships last year. I found that the strength amongst the top half dozen players was incredible, as good as it ever has been. So it was all very positive for the future. I think that the people who were the prize winners that day were well taught, had good instruments, knew what they were trying to do with the tunes, and I came away feeling quite positive for the future of the solo piping in the country.
Wel, gyjarad ha colas dochasach is on na pipe mode an in jerin. Genjugif ha kjol na pipe sjo ga haspenach ek fees voor fibedach a hare kamal gach blione an een naarte wache. Ha agus kjol pipe a immig duig. Ach se priaf ames na feesje sjo, e fib rugesal erenach, uilsachig agus a vrosnachig. Session e fib udin. Ar de wache, balle go kutrmach rikinelle an in jering, tuf na huklische. Ach ha anamal kutjoch et sali viniesh fibedach, a ha ga kamal aun gach bliome.
It started in 1994 as a one-off festival in the context of
a bigger festival, a year-long festival called Armagh Together, and the concept behind it was that every association and club in Armagh was asked to think of some specific thing that would in some way strengthen sort of community spirit and get people together. And we automatically thought we were the Pipers Club, and that piping was a universal language, and that the form of piping festival, based on getting the Irish piping and Scottish piping together, because we had a very strong Highland piping tradition in Armagh, lots of top bands and current All-Ireland Grade 2 champions and things like that, and we had lots of All-Ireland champion uilleann pipers.
Dúdach an dí bheis na clé híos staire agus bheit dí as Galicia, clé cáilrein agus ha mar san na púirse dollarráis a ruúirs is agad agus ha gúnsaach púirst fan na duine as Galicia as a cuideach an ann as Iran cuideach agus a dús a cúteach sin féichin differsáir stail ag duine.
Ha jelle go innetal sa bheit Hier jelle dúdach an sa dúchan an héin. As a chéine dúdach Píp fór sin é a fécin na hola seirsa fípach agus a gael bui de gach seirsa heil agus agad sin gíosach push cánaí van na híl an ríchas fan.
We've developed, we had a very austere, very, very strict sort of piping ethos at the start, which we still have, of course, but I mean, we only had solo piping, and we didn't have any accompaniment or groups or anything like that. We really wanted just the sound of the pipes and to put the pipes on a pedestal and give them, they weren't just part of a band or something. But then, obviously, there are fantastic bands that are pipe-led, and some of the great bands like the Ribheid Chiùil and Planksty and the Chieftains and all owed a lot of their success to being fronted with good pipers.
Rud bhuaigh mission tá sé fiúil tág áicríming thuirsta agus bhí sa bhara thulta na clúich na PIPING go háraibh bheith táir clúiche den lága sa chun thuirsta.
Just mention go bhfuil sáirse spéis a uasach mar san na ceáil achcha is agad agus hadíálach ar a ceáil ha tá choram an achcha a dúnsaach go ceáil nach raibh bliana an ráis.
As an nucan had píbrach gach go héin ha go fallan sláir, well ac an héin ha an alapa ha an heolcúideach géirin ha tá áicrí géins agus set géins fún na scíireach go héin snósin ha a sin cóna daile as na dúgan as tíoch. It's been like fallen you guys here for doing another.
So how fake different source PIPING could you have come back my ancient I fear you J as chick agus bheit píb rud gomaigh an Joannach is agad bheit sóise ceann gáil a bhéalú agus bheit rud telephone.
Despite the popularity and despite what we think about piping, that piping, in a sense, didn't have the status that it should have. It's one of the oldest instruments. It's a universal instrument. You find it in every culture. No matter how far back you go, you'll find a set of pipes. But yet it's sort of taken for granted. Like it's probably in Scotland even more so. That the bands are taken for granted. It's sort of a iconic image of Scotland. And actual music sometimes is forgotten about. But we thought differently. That the music is fantastic music in its own right. And deserved really to be heard and promoted.
Tá nóia, mar is géal muidilig na halbannaí agus na hairní tá teangaí agin tá litríart, tá metasoliart agus nóia tá das móraníocht agus an ceol agus bhíon táormsa gur casú ormsa irid ceoltraí go háirithe pibrí as Alban agus an céadhar riú casú ormsa pibrí as Alban ba mór rud i a héal ceol mar bhí an daimh agamsa de cheol a thulamise ar fíb na Alban agus datha mé lomlaithre gur onan an de cinneal ceol sin ráite tá irid difríochtaí agus nuances idir an de cheol teagam sin.
Is fum úsal atá an na stói fum nach glosin tú ag ein irish ceol eile. Tá méadú tací ar an irish ón céad lá, tíbal na 7 caracha a cuireú an céad regulator, nó rialtóir air. Tá tú an an set wad níos fearr all inniu ná mar bhí 23 bliain ó shin. Ach leis sin tá na sean setaní an, sú leis an set a bhí me sé ag casa, tá fum difriúla teacht. Tá níos amúil sé san ámid nó bhfuil sé sa duine nó ach na sean setaní tá fum an úsal agus jazz agus bín.
I suppose the uilleann pipe started to develop the real first references we see of uilleann pipes or something like uilleann pipes is reference to the pastoral pipes in the 1700s. And the significant development there was really the use of the bellows to blow and pump the instrument. The chanter wasn't fully developed in the way that we know it today. I suppose the first manifestation then of what we know is the full set of uilleann pipes. That's with a chanter that you can stop on your knee to get the second octave, and then with 3 drones and 3 regulators. The regulators provide accompaniment to the melody that you play in the chanter.
Dain mór an fíbrin agus luch cearta a bheit deanna fíban uilne imirich ag am na gorst san 1990. Wat droch bhuaig gar riomh bhicin seo pípadach san dúich.
There was a significant development then in the early 1900s when a lot of post-famine times uilleann pipers either emigrated to the United States, and a lot of the pipe makers followed them, and in particular the Taylor brothers from Drogheda in County Louth. They were operating in Philadelphia, and they started making what we now know as concert pitch pipes, which are probably the most common pitch for uilleann pipes. They're pitched in D, and they started making them mainly because people were playing in dance halls and they needed more volume.
Ag táiseach na trífichitin cha bhór go pípade I dhágal an anéring. Réir coltais charháin ach nis lugin a ciatíh. Hugan roch huiochuh seo ar a canineh a gheadam gus dóinal ar agus an ceol na pípe urinne a chúnach agus a bhrosnachuh.
Uilleann piping was at a very low ebb in the 1960s. There was less than 100 uilleann pipers in the entire world. So a number of people felt that something needed to be done. We gathered together in Bettystown in County Meath in 1968, and it was decided to form an organisation for the promotion of the playing, the teaching of the uilleann pipes, and the teaching of the making of the uilleann pipes. So that went. There was a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of follow-up, and from there, really, the People Uilleann was founded.
In the 60s, they were a dying instrument. There was nobody playing them. And I had to, to people in Ireland, oh, what is that, And in actual fact, I'd have to play something that wasn't traditional to get them interested, and then you could play them, a bit of traditional music. But they'd be asking me, and even in Dublin, it was embarrassing when I was a kid. I was back from London, I had long hair and the whole hippie thing. Back then, I'm not a hippie, believe me, not anymore. But back then, and I'd be sitting on stage with my family, my dad and brothers and sisters. We had a band called the Pavies, which is Pavie is traveller in Ireland. When I'd go on stage with them, there would be kids there in the front row. Jesus, look at your man! When you hear your man squealing the cat, I hadn't a clue what the Irish pipes were, and in actual fact, didn't like them.
Well, fi mé fása níos an Arbeit neasca, bhí chuú cearnaí don ceol tradition ag na thuismathaí agus chuirrma sé Simmons na cearnaí sin ó bhí mé onanta ág. Daitheann mé na gléasanna ceáinna le go léir a hamháin an fíbillion agus nar thola mé an uam nó an fíb seo ribh sin agus dúirt mé lom héan go gaithfean fáil amach cén gléas ceáil seo ar Harbí agus Inearan na dala bhí me go tuca sin dá gur thacra mé gon just gur hí mé gur bhaithe nó é an fíbarach ólam.
Since the late 60s with Planksty, and even before then there was another band, the Horselips, who introduced pipes into their band, and then you had the Bothy band, Moving Hearts, and various other bands with pipes, and then Riverdance, which was a big thing. And now every pipe maker you meet today, and there's a lot more of them than there were before, but every pipe maker you meet today will have a list the length of your arm. Where they're going, I don't know.
Mar Ribheid Chiùil hat lúchial an inérin idir Canan agus ceol. Hat tiernan o duinigin I tjagus kna píbe ulinje tar viant na gélige, rút nach ro idir bichante na da wa héna geunsachug. San leib na píbadan an an arda bhacha a háisich tiernan o duinigin agus in dú háitseachas kna píbe ulinje an na muinachan an balle as a bhela héin agus an travianna gélige haga tseakask.
Cínar háisich tusa?
An saira.
Agus an daithníonn si da?
Daithníonn.
Daithníonn? So Karl, bhfuil tusa ag sénim le tamil?
Le
Carh léon. Agus an dárod stoithe gomór bhfuil dúlacham sa an ná ghéalaigh agus ar fíbarach sa ceol agus tá mis sin is téas daoine fríide géalaigh agus mar a tháinig tú an sin tá beirt níiad am chuid cathal agus láchlann tá siad san ag fólam na pípe agus is fríide géalaigh tá siad a bhólam agus is rud ionta nádartha ní rud mór ach nar bhí mis ag fása níos níró a lehéid ag tarlú so tá sé chuann sé dú menaman ar an sinna ecail. Right, buna muid tríal as an port seo when sick is a tea you want. So tréis sé cethir, déanam muid go mála, ag tuisirt ar Ar bhain farsan tá siad an bhfuil sé ionta táhachtach go bhfuil rud faoi le go jigla duine a dhéanú cé acu ceol, sport nó cipéci an rud agus go háirithe nuair is gaol muidilig agus ghfuil ar geol cósaibhir sin agus ghfuil ar teangaí agus litríocht cósaibhir sin ghfuil sé ionta tábhachta ghfuil an tíosóg ag fólam faoin éireacht atá aginine agus chuann sé go mór le pásantacht an duine nuair atá siad abalta a geol haon nó ceol a wintre a henim agus ceol a sinseir. Well, níl léas píbe cos leis an fíb eile I ddír bí eile sin rud atá an an rud is bonúsaí fa tír ar bí nó cinenne ar bí nó an gléas haon agus is dúthaí an gléas is bonúsaí ná gléas ag leat fad an dhéanamh as cos le pí a fér agus sin tú tá tropic chartas agus tá ar bhain sin tá gléas na PB tóca ar sin ach leis an fíb Ilan seo an buach foinse den tógáil ar an fíb.
Ag an céad tionol in idir seaca hocht bhí timpeall chuige píbarí an agus ní mór an méid sin ag an am a bhí na píbarí an uair sin. So as sin go dtí an lá seo atá an de bhrí sin agus is dói an múna a tharla in éis sin do ceoltarí fud na tíre agus thar leir tá sé an píbal go mór thar leir bhún mise ceol san Europa, America agus go fada leis an nua-Héileán. So tá píbarí ar fud an domhan, tá daoine ag teachtain is ón Tseapáin a fálam, ón Idáil, Gearmán, an Astráil, choláid. So tá sé fástaí go mór. Nuair nach raibh mór an píbarí thar leir roimh sin.
No ní tíor agahfuil siad gan, ach bíon ort fannacht ar a gléas ceoil, ca deantarí pí-bun, ach bíon lista fithe acu agus chuirtear daine mar a lista ar sort of bíon ort fannacht beidir jazz blian, beidir trí bliana, still ar rá. Ach bíon ort fannacht, ní honnané agus fideala ceannacht, caitú fannacht.
A lot of the leading makers have very, very long waiting lists, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. So what we're trying to do is make sure that people can readily get a set of pipes in the way that you can go and buy a violin or a tin whistle or a flute. Excuse me. You know, you can get them when you want them, when you need them, and at a reasonable price and a good quality. So that's one of the biggest challenges for the world of uilleann piping and the píbarí uilleann, you know.
So sort aspa setany píbe faoi láthair agus tam muid géirí go méid níos mó daoine ag déanamh setany do ceoltóirí nó do píbarí. So tá na píbarí uilleann ag fécinn ar sin agus tá dóchas acu go méid cuasa agraí go méid daoine an ceird sin álam mar tá níl an méid set le fáil agus an méid daoine atá a géirí tosaíar an píb agus a lehéid cóga méid níos mó daoine ag déanamh setany píbe.
Píbarí uilleann started gathering momentum, getting members to join from around the world, to the state where now the Píbarí uilleann has members in over 40 countries. There are uilleann pipers clubs all around the world. There's people of all ages. There's great interest. I'd say there's probably 6,000 or 7,000 uilleann pipers around the world, and the Píbarí uilleann would have over maybe 2,000-3,000 active members. So it's really taken off. People are very interested in it.
Dearhan go méo ar a léad beidir trí chéad píberí in oltamh san am lethir. So sló mór. Tá cumar de séón cinse ach níl an bhéim céirne ar chumart sí píbereachta an John Éireann is atá hallan albain in sa tíir seo maidir sé píbereachta bíon daine sin am ceáil ar na píbí ó thar a ghúil dúil an anama ontú agus sin é ní rud é bhhanas le compata sí nó a gamar sin. Tá sinnta fáin san am lethir agus bheith daoine an bhí bliana hin na joglah a Craigville go méid go fáin céirne.
Hello and welcome to Nephibil's Beginner Piping Tuition Series. There aren't enough experienced teachers available in the far-flung corners of the world that people want to play the pipes. So we do, Nephibil and other organisations make tuition available on their website, and that's something we're accelerating, and in recent times we've tried to make it more accessible to people.
Well, le couple bliana nuas le Jane bliana nó cuig bliana déag nuas mar dúirt mi tá ború as country chart lín na líine taig fólam na pibe as do héan an aibas mó atá le sin nach bhfuil golóir daoine a genu le lésanna tífa agus gúil sé Jackar aráit ag duine ág a tá mai ag sinnim ceáil ar fibelan go gúil orthú fanart Jane bliana le set mar ceart a eil ach bhein héan inta dochas a faoi taithí a cheol agus go háirithe taithí na píbereachta mar tíam ó bheith taistil ag na tinol píbereachta ar fud na tíre agus thar lear san Europa agus in America gúil an dúla daoine in san píbereacht agus tuigh sé sin de tharbheith gró gúil irid píbereachta le Clinston in sna ar Blúiesci agus Macasail River Dance rinse sin chuidhór leis an fibelan ar de haint ar cheol na pibe illan agus rudí cosa le an ceol a rinneú ar Titanic agus Braveheart agus a Macasail hí loch féhanna a bhád níos leithne dá bhar agus táiméid tá borúis ní a hart ar méid lína níine taigh fólam na pibe dá bhar.